10 years ago, it's now February 2021. In February 2011, exactly 10 years ago, there was another bitter cold snap that hit Texas. And just like now, 10 years ago, Texas's power grid could not handle it. Their ability to generate power collapsed because of the cold, just as demand spiked for power to provide heat. And in 2011, just like now, the grid collapsed, and Texas had power blackouts rolling across the state.
Members, we're going to hear a lot of discussion today. Obviously, the issue we're here today is because of the rolling blackouts across the state on February the 2nd. The issues we're going to cover include the communication, natural gas curtailment, critical infrastructure designations. Obviously, we need to improve on all of the above, and we're here to look at what happened, how we're going to improve on it, and how we're going to keep it from happening again. I think it's important to understand that the underlying cause of this problem was a lack of electric generation when it was called on. If generating units had not experienced problems, we wouldn't be here today having this hearing.
Commissioner Smitherman, you and I hail from about the same part of the state, and I think you had made reference to preparations prior to a hurricane making landfall, where a lot of these issues would be considered, a plan made to be prepared as soon as that storm came on shore. And I guess I'm a little bit in amazement that we don't do the same thing when we know a week ahead of time, or sometimes 2 weeks ahead of time, that the Arctic blast is coming into Texas, and we've got weather forecasts that show we're going to have sub-freezing weather for several days, maybe down in the teens and 20 degrees. And then when we have the rolling blackouts, brownouts, or whatever you want to call them, we find out that, much to my amazement, that power plants are unable to operate because they have frozen water lines. And I guess my question is more of a common sense one. Can't we have a plan for that when we have noticed that we're going to have these sub-freezing temperatures for several days, and that we know that our demand is going to be a lot higher than normal as a result of that, that we don't have power plants that are serving as auxiliary power generators for us that are not winterized?
One could look at these plans and see the entire. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is looking forward. You know, the past is past. Right. We got to learn from it and make sure that when this happens again, whether it's 1 year from now, 10 years from now, we do not have this happen again. And what are the variable issues? And I guess to me, how do we make sure, and who's going to make sure that the weatherization part, now obviously whether these are confined plants, whether, you know, we have enclosed and the cost of that, such as they are up north, or whether they're open because of the summertime heat here, and trying to make sure that we have the plant operate throughout. But to me, as Senator Jackson mentioned, there's really no excuse, in my humble opinion, that a facility should go off when you know it's going to freeze a week out.
It's essential to really why we're here today, which is not really for discussion of fuel costs. It's what went wrong, and you touched on a couple of essential points there. One, when you cut off power to a plant that is either processing or sending gas, clearly a miscalculation. When you have plants that shut down because the pipes freeze or some other reason because it's cold, clearly a miscalculation or misplanning. And so what this hearing is really about is who else screwed up, what did they do, and what's going to be done to keep it from happening again. Question for anybody. You touched on a couple of good points.
what do we have to do? If you have the authority, you and the commission have the authority to do that, we've got to figure out a way to somehow incentivize the generators to be prepared. This is, it's, 82 outages, I think, is unacceptable. I mean, it's just, that's, we shouldn't have had that. They should have been prepared. They should have known it's going to be cold, and I think that's where we're getting to, is that this is unacceptable. And I'm looking. I know we've identified the problem. Now I'm looking for how are we going to make sure that we don't have this happen again. And I guess I'd go back to Chairman Smitherman. If we have that authority for both the communication and the weatherization piece, I think the legislature is saying we want to make sure that that is implemented. I know we had a cold night and it was an unusual event, but they have these cold nights in the east all the time, and a lot of these generators operate both places.
You all represent what I consider the brain thrust behind the issue on power and energy and everything else that Texas depends on to be able to make it work. I want to publicly thank Governor Dewhurst. He called me about 3-4 times during the outages, gave me updates, wanted to know specifically what was going on in the valley. And there was a few issues that obviously I was concerned with. Public information was one, and of course, at one point or another, because of the rolling brownouts or blackouts, people had some kind of power that they could turn on a TV or play a radio or try to get the information necessary for them to be informed. And that's basically what my concern is, an informed public, so that they can understand specifically what we are working on as a state for them. What exactly took place with ERCOT and that parts of the state where these outages were more prevalent, in the valley, for example? What was done to inform the public, to bring them up to date, besides its public officials like Governor Dewhurst calling me and me calling Spanish radio and talking to our public, which I did. But what exactly took place during this period of time?
Working through, I guess, through the evening of the 2nd and into the morning of the 3rd, the focus was almost entirely on the valley situation. And I think that's one where we need to spend some additional attention going forward. I dialed the number I thought was your cell phone. I may not have gotten you as we went into that evening because I was concerned about the valley.
It was hard to get my cell phone going when I need electricity. But I'm thankful. I look forward to the impact statement. Thank you. In terms of gas usage, I've asked this question before in prior sessions, and you sparked it off right now by listening that maybe some more gas is going to other states. Obviously, we have plenty of gas, but we also have, with our neighbors to the south, plenty of gas there too. Are there pipelines at this time that are being utilized to bring that gas, if it's cost effective, to us? I think one of the best ways, and there's a lot of concern about illegal immigration, one of the best ways to curb it is obviously to invest with our neighbors in creating jobs and building infrastructure in return for gas usage from the state of Tamaulipas, for example. In my opinion, would curb illegal immigration because they'd have jobs to be able to stay and work at. What are your thoughts about the future in terms of that being a funnel or a place that we can look at for additional gas reserves?
I probably would have stated them in a different order. Weatherization of the plants is the item that I hope we can really focus on improving. Communications is certainly an area where we can improve. I think the transmission wires companies have some opportunities there as well. And then on the gas issue, I would just say for this event, that was not a significant contributor, but I don't want us to lose sight of that need to investigate further. I had always feared that gas curtailments would create an event like this over a long period of cold weather. I still have that concern.
Mr. Chairman, have you seen anything so far that would lead you to think you need any help from the legislature in terms of a bill? Or do you have all the authority necessary to address these three general areas of concern?
I think we have all the authority that we need, Mr. Chairman.
After the fiasco in 2011 and those recommendations from FERC, Texas announced some best practices for all its power producers. But that's just what they were, best practices. It didn't actually require any of them to do anything. And so Texas's power producers didn't do anything. And now Texas is reliably a state where the power turns off, sometimes for days on end, when the state gets cold weather.